Ladies and gentlemen, your sweet Zionist white colonizer, Tall the Traveling Clap, coming to you live from the United States of America. Support the channel by buying some Traveling Clap merch down below in the description. And let's get into this clip by Douglas Murayovich.
Joining me now in the studio is the author and commentator Douglas Murray to speak about his new book on democracies and death cults. Who can see that? There we are. Top pluggage for that. Douglas, lovely to see you.
So good to be with you.
Before we speak about this book, can we talk about what has happened in HMP Frankland in Durham? We've got the brother of the Manchester arena bomber, Hamish Abidi, having attacked 3 prison guards. They've got life-changing injuries, cooking oil thrown at them. They've also been stabbed. We think this is the second time this has happened, but crucially, it comes 9 days after officers at that prison reported that there was no point segregating the Islamic extremists in that prison anymore because most of the prison estate is indeed of that persuasion. What's your reaction to that story?
Interesting.
Well, obviously, it's a failing in the prison system, failing of security, obviously, the poor officers who've been attacked, evidence of that. I think that there's always in these things a tendency to look at the first bit of the problem and not at the wider problem. The wider problem includes not just why there are so many people in prison, the jihadists and set up gangs, effectively, in our prisons, but also this question of that I've asked since the Manchester arena bomber was identified. Why were the Abedi family in Britain to begin with? We still don't know the answer to that. 8 years on, we just don't know the answer. Abedi's father seems to have fallen out with Colonel Gaddafi because they were from rival jihadist groups. So why is Britain the place where people who fall out with other jihadists come to continue their lives?
Also, why is the taxpayer paying for Abidi to be in prison
It's a good
if
question.
he's attacking officers, not just here, but also at Belmarsh, we believe?
Why are any of the family here in the first place? There has been no inquiry so far as I know, no minister or Home Office official held accountable for this. And until we start holding people accountable for the decisions they make that are so terrible, nothing will change.
You might be familiar with Amjad Tatar. He came on the show some months ago. He's a Emirati sort of counter-Islamic extremism expert. And he made the point that he thinks there are more extremists in Britain than there are in the Middle East. I mean, it was quite the claim. He's making the point that, for instance, it is illegal in countries like Egypt.
Probably, by the way, more capable extremists in Britain than there are in the Middle East. Something to clarify.
And indeed the UAE to wave Hamas and Hezbollah flags, and he couldn't believe it that he came to London and saw them on the streets of the capital. Equally, he is wondering why on earth we haven't proscribed the Muslim Brotherhood. That's an organisation that is banned in Syria. What's your view on the current state of play with Islamic extremism in Great Britain?
It's the same it's been for years, and no one has changed it, Conservative or Labour. No one's going to change it. It's just too big a problem for them. They're much too frit to know what to do about it. You're completely right. I've spoken to many people in the UAE who have the same view as your guest. First of all, by the way, it's also illegal to fly the flags of proscribed terrorist organisations like Hamas and Hezbollah in the UK. The 2006 Anti-Terrorism Act made that illegal, the glorification of terror. But as you and your viewers know, it's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them. And whether the CPS actually prosecutes for it. I have many friends from across the Middle East and elsewhere who are horrified by what is happening in our country. They are on top of much of this to differing degrees across that region. But here in the UK, they come and they just say, what are you allowing? One reason why we do allow it is because even after all of these years, we still don't understand it or want to confront it. I say we, I really mean government, politicians, Westminster.
Well, that also plays into my next question about this watering down of these local inquiries into the grooming gangs. Now, Trevor Phillips, the former head of the Equality Commission, had suggested that was because Labour doesn't want to, quote, offend Pakistanis.
Yes.
Do you concur with that view? Why do you think, A, we haven't got a national inquiry, and B, what inquiries we are having seem to have been watered down?
I'm not a fan of inquiries into this, I'll be frank. I think it's a distraction. I think it's lamentable that Angela Rayner and the Labour government have seen fit to not even have inquiries into this. But as I've said sometime in the last months, we've had plenty of inquiries into the rape gangs. We've had plenty. Where do they go? What happens? Who acts on them? Why are there no more prosecutions? Why is there not a speed up in the number of prosecutions? The number of victims versus the number of people prosecuted in the last 2 decades does not stack up. And when I hear people saying, oh, this is going to upset the Pakistani community and so on, I say, first of all, why would they be upset? If members of my community were found to be gang raping girls based on their race, I would want to know about it, and I'd want those people to be prosecuted. I'd be very shameful about it, but I would want those people to go to prison. So why is it upsetting to Pakistani communities in the UK? And why, after all of these years, do we have people saying, oh, it's racist or Islamophobic or much more to even mention this? Sorry, it is too late in the day to play those games, and we should be utterly, utterly intolerant of anyone at this stage in 2025 knowing what we know about these mass crimes, claiming that the best thing you can do with it is to have yet another inquiry, which will be shelved by yet another government and nothing happening. It's time that we actually did things in this country instead of just doing inquiries into them.
We learned this morning that the Rotherham gang got 600 grand in legal aid to defend their case.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, those are one of the relatively few gangs that actually, not enough people were prosecuted, but one of the very few ones where that was actually prosecutions. Some of the members of that gang, they also made sure that they gave up their Pakistani passports because the state acts so slowly here, and then they're only on a British passport, and then you can't deport them. It's the whole thing is lamentable, and until a government gets this in its grip and deals with it, we should keep shouting from the rooftops about this.
I should point out, actually, that was a GB News exclusive, the 600 grand on legal aid. And as you'll know, Charlie Peters,
Yes,
my GB News colleague, has done a lot of work on this.
Modern day Islamic colonialism in the UK. I'll tell you guys a little story, a personal story from my life. I'm Jewish, very much Jewish, proud Jewish person. But when I first started traveling the world, a lot of the places where I got my start, quote unquote, in my career and my travel vlogging was in Europe. And I used to go to Paris and London actually quite frequently because it was very cheap for me to fly from the US at the time. There was like €100 flights from Miami to London, and I would fly. And I would start my journeys around Europe and the UK, and then I would go vlogging in the UK, and I would go vlogging around Europe. And even if you scroll back on this channel far enough, you'll see a lot of those adventures. I stopped going to London in 2017 because I genuinely felt unsafe. And I remember there was like a string of stabbings, I think, that happened in 2015 and 2016, either right before or right after I had left the UK, both times, specifically in London. And some of them were like Islamic, I think most of them, or I think all of them were Islamic-backed stabbings. And for me to stop going to a place because I don't feel safe is kind of a stretch, because I'm a bit of a daredevil, and I do things that are generally seen by the public as not so safe. But that's how unsafe I felt in the UK. And I think I really resonate with what Douglas Murray, or actually what the newscaster said here, what the producer of this episode said about how there may be, that this Emirati person said that there may be more dangerous Islamists in the streets of the UK now than there are in the Arab world. And I actually think that maybe that's not true. There's probably way more dangerous Muslims around the Middle East than there ever will be in the UK. But what is different? The difference is how capable are the ones in the UK. And they're very capable. They have connections. They speak English well. They can actually do major damage. And you see people like Muhammad Hijab or Ali Dawa who preach this perverted version of Islam, this disgusting version of Islam, and influence millions of people in the most negative way possible, especially on Israel, on the Jewish people, on the West and Western culture. They give no honor or respect to the cultures and the religions that predated the existence of their precious religion and their precious culture of Arabism, Pan-Arabism, and Arab colonialism. They give no respect whatsoever to any of the cultures that predated the existence of their people, especially Muhammad Hijab being an Egyptian, if I believe correctly. If I know this fact, I believe he's Egyptian. So it's a really terrible cycle of just horse shit, just of terrible demeanor and terrible governance. I'll tell you so much so that I don't know if, based on my YouTube channel, I'd actually be able to go back to the UK. I'm being genuine when I say it. I don't know if I were to go to the UK in the near future, if I would even be allowed in. I'm not sure. There's a chance that I would go there and I could not be allowed entrance into the UK based on the fact that I preach truth about the Arab world that is hard and sometimes a little bit aggressive. But streets or Hamas flags and Hezbollah flags in the streets are A-okay. But this is why I truly believe that people need to understand. I do talks. I do speaking engagements around the world. I'm a public speaker now. Putting the ego on the side for a moment. One of the talks that I give is I talk about the attack that happened in Majd al-Shams about a year ago, where Hezbollah launched a ballistic missile at a soccer field with 12 kids in it. And I was there a couple days after it had happened. It was very much fresh in everybody's mind. I went to the families who had their kids killed and taken away from them. And I always post up the question. I say, if this is what the Arabs or the Arab world has saved for themselves, and that's just one example amongst millions of examples, but that's one example that hit close to home because I was physically there to see it. If this is what they have saved for their own people, Arab on Arab, what, my friends, what could they possibly have saved for us? For a Mizrahi Jew, for an Ashkenazi Jew, for an Ethiopian Jew, for a Christian in the UK, for a Christian in America. If that's how you treat your fellow Arab, somebody you claim you have had peace with, and remember, the citizens of Majd al-Shams were not Zionists. They were captured by the Israeli Defense Force, given, freedom to exist. Many of them rejected the idea of existing in Israel, so they just lived their lives happily in sort of like a in-between status, and that's fine. Nobody's judging them for it. They were not Zionists. A lot of them did not serve in the army. If that's and that's how you treat your own as an Arab, what the fuck are they going to do for us? Can you imagine? Can you imagine what they have in store for us? It's a serious question. It's a serious question. You need to ponder on it. And Douglas Murray brings up this exact point. There's been unfettered, unregulated access. And you see the American administration actually now taking a step against all the PC bullshit, against all the PC culture. And I'm not a conservative. I'm not a Republican. I don't identify with any political party. I'm smack dab in the middle. Fuck everybody. I don't care. But you see what Trump is doing right now. Marco Rubio is doing. Deporting these people who openly supported terrorism against Western society, against America, against Israel. Deporting them out of the hell out of the country, and that is exactly what needs to be done all over the world. You hate the West? You hate where you are? Good. Get the fuck on. It's a privilege to be here. I thank God every single day that I was born in America and I have access to America and to the Middle East. It is a privilege, and I don't take it for granted at all. It's a privilege, and I try to make the most out of it. And that's why I stand up for America and I stand up for Israel together. But it is a privilege, and I acknowledge that privilege, and I would try to never do anything to take that privilege away from me, to ever undermine that privilege. This is something that these Arab colonialists, who very much are colonialists and are plaguing people, minorities all over the Middle East and North Africa, this is what they're currently doing. This is what they're currently enacting. So just a little information from your friendly traveling clad. If you do want to support the channel, Queen of Shabbat shirt available on thetravelingclad.com. Get it right now, and we'll see you in the next one. I love you guys a long time. Goodbye, clads.
If you believe in my content and want to support me, just know your help is needed. There's a bunch of great ways to support me, being PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, or joining my Patreon community down below. Patreon is the best way to support my channel, and you'll get a bunch of cool perks depending on what tier you join. Another great way to support me is by buying my merchandise on thetravelingclat.com. I regularly drop new merch designs like this beautiful hat or this amazing shirt, where you can support the channel and get something cool for yourself. I also have an amazing Discord community with people from all over the world. Thank you so much for your support.